Good morning, good morning. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us all rejoice and be glad in it. As always, I thank you for tuning in. I thank you for all that you do, for your encouragement, liking, sharing. Thank you so much. As a reminder to those who have viewed before, and as a notice to those who are viewing for the first time, I do this every Sunday morning, 6 a.m., the Sunday Morning Breakfast Podcast. I want to thank you for everything you've done over this year and just past 3 months that I've been doing this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I do not ask for anything for what I do. I don't ask for anything monetarily, that is. I just ask that you would share the video, share something you heard, something you learned, whatever. Share with people. That's all I ask for. That's all. Our scripture today comes from the book of Romans, New Testament book of Romans, Paul's epistle to the Romans, the 12th chapter. I'm going to be reading for you verses 1 and 2 from the Amplified version of the Bible. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies, dedicating all of yourselves, set apart as a living sacrifice, holy and well-pleasing to God, which is your rational act of worship. And do not be conformed to this world any longer with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed and progressively changed as you mature spiritually by the renewing of your mind, focusing on godly values and ethical attitudes, so that you may prove for yourselves what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect in his plan and purpose for you. I want to talk to you with this thought in mind. I got a new attitude. Or change your mind, change your life. I got a new attitude. Or change your mind, change your life. One of my favorite cartoons growing up was the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. Old schoolers know what I'm talking about. The Rocky and Bullwinkle show featured Rocky J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle T. Moose out on their adventures, crime fighting, as undercover operatives for the government. Well, supposedly undercover, but everybody knew who they were, especially their biggest adversaries, Boris and Natasha. I liked it not because it was interesting to see Rocky J. Squirrel go flying around the sky all the time, or to see him always saving Bullwinkle or having to fix something Bullwinkle messed up. It wasn't because I liked seeing Natasha and Boris, get foiled again. It wasn't always because I want to see a Bullwinkle ever pull a rabbit out the hat. I always say, watch me pull a rabbit out my hat, but then he goes to pull it out and he pulls out everything but a rabbit. Wasn't that? It was because Bullwinkle, the Rocky and Bullwinkle show, the narrator would give 2 titles to whatever the episode was. He say, stay tuned then for our next episode, and give you the title and say, or, and give you another title. I believe that there are 2 reasons that there were 2 titles used. One reason is that the most fitting title for the episode was based on the perspective of the viewer. Secondly, I believe that there were 2 titles because 2 titles spoke to a dichotomy. Either or. You could look at it this way or you could look at it that way. Either way, both of them fit the situation. It wasn't necessarily you chose either or because of your perspective, but it was actually a both and situation. It spoke to the dichotomy of mankind, much in the way that the song Mind Made Up by the late Reverend Marvin Yancey did. In the verse, there was only one verse of the song. Reverend Yancey said, I gave up everything to follow him. Now my life is not so dim. I gave up everything to follow him. He's my best friend. Goes to the chorus which says, my mind is made up. I'm on my way up. I'm going to hold my head up. I'm going on to live with the Lord. And most people are familiar with the change to this song because so many gospel artists have used it in other songs. And it's actually borrowed from another song. It says, trouble in my way. I have to cry sometime. Trouble in my way. I have to cry sometime. I lay awake at night, but that's all right. Because Jesus will fix it after a while. The song speaks to the spiritual and the natural, the sacred and the secular, the dichotomy of man, because we are not just one. We're not either or, we're both and. It's like the yin yang. We are light and we are dark. Just matter which one we are showing that is prevalent. But that's another story I'm not going to get off into today with the yin yang. In this song, yes, he said, yes, I made my mind up and I gave my life to the Lord. And as a result, I'm on my way to heaven. Yes, that's the spirituality of me. But in my natural state, in the meantime, I have problems. I have issues that come up and I wrestle with them. Although I know Jesus will roll my burdens away, I stay up at night crying sometimes. I have trouble. I'm saved, but I got trouble. And sometimes it gets to me. The more familiar King James Version of our text today states, I beseech ye, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. The Apostle Paul tells us that we need to give ourselves, give our bodies, give our everything to the service of God as a living sacrifice. Under the customs of the Old Testament, the offerer took what they were offering to the temple. At the temple, they gave their offering to the priests, and the priests sacrificed that offering unto God. However, under this dispensation of grace, we don't have to do that anymore. Thank God we make animals extinct. I know I would. Under this dispensation of grace, we are the offerer. We are the sacrifice. We are the temple, and we are the priest. It is therefore up to us to sacrifice ourselves, sacrifice our lives unto the Lord. Do you know what that means, my brothers and sisters? It means it is our duty to kill our flesh. Not kill ourselves, literally, but to kill our flesh as an act of worship, to subdue ourselves and improve ourselves. Paul said this is our reasonable service. In other words, it just makes sense to do it. After all, look at what God has given us, just on the basic level. I'm not going to go too in depth on it. Look at what he gave us. If you look at Genesis, in the beginning, when he created everything we would need was created before mankind was created. Just look at it. We're breathing right now. We're breathing. Before we were born, before we were formed, before mankind was formed, God placed the sun in the sky. He placed trees in the earth. He started the wind to blow. He put water in place. Separated the water from the dry places and put in rivers and streams that feed these trees. The sunlight then causes the action of photosynthesis to kick in, which gives us the greenery of the shrubs, the bushes, the trees, those which breathe off oxygen. the oxygen that we breathe in without even thinking. I need to inhale and exhale. And every time we breathe out, we don't breathe out oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. But yet those trees breathing in this greenery take in that oxygen and transform it, take in that carbon dioxide, transform it to oxygen and give it back to us as oxygen. Come on, somebody. He did that for us. God gave us everything he had. When he made man, he made man. He formed him out of the dust of the earth, it says. And then he breathed into mankind himself. He breathed into him his spirit. God gave us all he had. So much to the fact that even before the world was formed, the lamb was slain on the altar. Jesus was already on the cross. It just had to become manifested. Manifestation, yes. He gave us his son. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. God gave us his all. It just makes sense there that we give him our all. Just makes sense. Parenthetically speaking, it was Paul who in his first letter to the Corinthians said, I die daily. By this, he meant that every day God gave him, he sacrificed self in order to fulfill his duties to God. But let me tell you, let me go back to the sacrifice. One thing about the sacrifices of old is that after being sacrificed, they did not have the same form as they previously did. In other words, what was presented as a sacrifice was transformed during the sacrifice. For example, an animal that was offered as a sacrifice was slaughtered, burned on the altar, and the priest was then allowed to eat certain parts that didn't get burned up. When the process was completed, what originally was brought into the temple and what remained on the altar looked like two different things. Translation to our situation, we should have a whole different form after sacrificing ourselves to God than what we did before we laid our all on the altar. And how do we do that? By renewing our minds. By denotation, the word renewing, as is used in our text, means to change for the better. Paul said in the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I become a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Paul, formerly Saul, the self-described Pharisee of Pharisees, the man who served the warrants that had many arrested and killed for being Christians, the same man who held the men's coats as they stoned Stephen, tells us that he had to start thinking differently. The man who once acted out of devotion to the letter of the law now acts out of love to the letter of grace. He had to make new again his mind. He had to unlearn all that he knew and learn anew what he thought that he knew. I was talking to a friend recently, and they expressed to me, I'm moving fast, y'all. I'm moving fast. Hope I ain't going too fast for you. But you know, I don't take long. I was talking to a friend recently, and they expressed a desire for a certain position in the church. Not a particular church, but in the church body. There's nothing's wrong with that. But as we talked, I became disturbed because they told me that people not going to be ready for them. Because they not going to be like the people who formerly held this position in times of old, in the back in the day. They not going to be like them. This friend went on to say that the old schoolers who held this position were too nice to people. And the people took their kindness for weakness and oftentimes ran over them in many instances. My friend said people gonna have to know that if they come at me sideways, they gonna get straightened out. And he even said they gonna know I'll get with you. My brothers and sisters, A failure to sacrifice self and to renew the mind is why we have so many people who go into the pool dry devils and come up wet devils. People bringing that street mentality, that unsaved mentality, that mindset of self, that egomaniacal thought pattern and so forth into the church and not getting their mind renewed is why people are getting hurt in the church. In other words, too many people are coming to eat caviar and truffles with a catfish and mushroom mentality. I must say that again. Too many people are coming to eat caviar and truffles with a catfish and mushroom mentality. You cannot walk into a fine dining establishment dressed like you're going to Mama Neal's Greasy Spoon. You got to change your appearance. It would look imbecilic of a person to have Swiss chard on their plate and eating it like it's collard greens and cornbread in grandma's kitchen. Then sit there and mash your cornbread up in it and mix it in. Nothing wrong with that if you eat it like that. And taking your fingers and picking it up, eating it with your fingers. But you sitting in a fine dining establishment with Swiss chard on your plate. Picking up a steak like it's a pork chop. Come on, let me leave that alone. Because perhaps it is because I was taught manners and customs for dining when I was a kid and often attended banquets and whatnot, that I find it embarrassing when people don't have proper table manners, eating in public like they eat at home, acting in the church like they act in the streets. And perhaps it's because I slipped that in. And perhaps it was because I was brought up in the church with decorum, that I'm deeply disturbed by people coming into the church with foolishness, carrying on like they don't have a God to serve and cannot or do not conduct themselves in a manner of reverence, solemnity, and sacredness. Ecclesiastes 5 tells us not to come up in the church with our foolishness. You got to change your mind in order to change your life. Your attitude will determine your latitude. Yeah, I know the saying is your attitude will determine your altitude, but I'm saying latitude. I'm saying latitude because 1, it rhymes. 2, latitude shows how far you have come from the central point. 3, because one definition of latitude is scope of freedom of action or thought. Yes, a CEO can decide to give workers latitude, but that does not give them the authority to step outside of the tenets, standards, goals, and operations of the corporation. God gives us latitude, but that don't mean we step outside of the word, step outside of the work, step out of service to God and our fellow man in order to act a dadgum fool and do whatever we think we want to do. Your attitude will determine your latitude. How you think determines how far you came from that central point. And before you say I'm on the soapbox, no, I ain't on the soapbox. I'm just driving this thing and trying to get somebody where they need to be. My brothers and sisters, it is time out for that thought process of people need to know I still got some Peter in me. Yeah, we know you still got some Peter in you. We understand you cut somebody in a minute. We see how you are. But we still waiting to see that part of Peter that took the word to the people who hadn't heard. If you go claim Peter's violent side, claim that dichotomy. Claim the evangelism side too. Stop making excuses. Hold on, I'm almost there. I'm finna park this thing straight and get back to where we was at. I'll park this thing straight to somebody's driveway. You can take the person out of the streets. You can't take the streets out of the person. Now I'm substituting that for the N-words. You know how we are. You know how we talk. You can take the person out of the world, but you can't take the world out of the person. To that, I'm going to use 5 letters. GTFOH. And before y'all think I'm saying what that is, y'all know what GTFOH is. Get that foolishness out of here. 2 Corinthians 5:17 states, when anyone belongs to Christ, they become a new person. Their old way of life is gone. Their new life has begun. My brothers and sisters, a little while back, I recently experienced some setbacks. I had some frustrations. I had a sister pass at the age of 54 from cancer. And I felt like I was being overwhelmed. The relationship I was in was something else. I was overwhelmed like the cow god lady. The old schools remember her. So much was going on, and all she could do was scream, "Cow god, take me away." Her head was just filled with everything that's going on. That's where I was at. I let it all get to me, and it got me down. I was even worried about the celebration that my nieces and I were putting together to celebrate my sister's life. I was wondering if it would be a success. If everyone would come through on their part and do what they supposed to do. I was big worried, y'all. But coming up to that date, I adopted a new attitude about it. Not that I did not care in the sense of it didn't matter, but I did not care what happens. I said, I don't care what happens. I meant that in the sense of I'm done worrying about it, case so rah. What will be, will be. I'm not going to stress over this. I'm not going to pull my hair out what little I got. I'm not going to be worried. Case so rah. I'm just going to put it in God's hands, do my part, and wait and see what happens. I wound up taking that same attitude and applying it to what was going on in my life. Said, I don't care. Not I don't care as in, I don't care. I don't care as in, I don't care as in I'm not worrying about nothing. I'm just going to do what I got to do in case of rah. I'm going to talk to God about it. I'm going to do my part. And I'm going to let it just do what it do and see what it do. You know, life is different when you learn to move from supplication to determination and then from determination to manifestation. When you pray, you act, and then you wait for it to come to fruition. You pray on it. You do what you got to do, and you wait for it to come to fruition. I'm going to say it one more time. You pray on it. Do what you got to do and wait for it to come to fruition. Ooh, that attitude right there, man, I'm telling you, it'll do some things. Thoughts, works, and patience. That's all, man, I'm telling y'all, life becomes different when you change your mind, when you change your attitude, when you get a new attitude. And before I close, I want to testify that those current situations all took a brighter turn than what they were because I had a new attitude. I prayed, I did what I had to do, and manifestation is coming, y'all. By the way, the celebration went very great. It went very well. Those who need to be there were there. Those who should be there were there. It went without a hiccup. We had a good time, those of us who were there. And man, we did like she would have wanted. We had a good time. Had us some catfish, French fries. Those who drank liquor. No other people had soda, water, whatever. But everybody enjoyed good company, good music, and just sharing memories, having fun. My brothers and sisters, earlier in this message, I spoke to the dichotomy of mankind, the sacred and the secular, the spiritual and the natural, through the words of a gospel song by the late Reverend Marvin Yancey. As I close out this edition of the Sunday Morning Breakfast Podcast, I want to address the spiritual through the secular. I address the secular through the spiritual, the natural through the spiritual. Now I want to flip that thing around and address our spiritual through the natural. And leave you with a verse and chorus of a song by Miss Patricia Louise Hope. Yeah, you know her as Patti LaBelle. She had a song that said, running hot, running cold. I was running into overload. It was extreme. I took it so high, so low. So low, there was nowhere to go. Like a bad tree. Somewhere the wires uncrossed, the tables were turned. Never knew I had such a lesson to learn. I'm feeling good from my head to my shoes. Know where I'm going and I know what to do. I tidied up my point of view. I got a new attitude. I'm in control. My worries are few. Y'all, I want to preach a little while, but I'm going to wrap this thing up. Baby. I'm in control. My worries are few. Because I got love like I never knew. I got a new attitude. My brothers and sisters, if you change your mind, you will change your life. I promise, change your mind, change your way of thinking. Your whole life will change. once you get a new attitude. Be blessed, my brothers. Be blessed, my sisters. I love you. God loves you. And a dadgum thing you can do about it.